Good morning. Thank you for coming so bright and early. My name is Carlos Noriega. I lead the developer products team at Squads. We build products and infrastructure on stablecoin rails to unlock the benefits of modern money. Squads protocol, on which we've been working on since 2021, has over $10 billion in value secured. And most major teams in the ecosystem use Squads protocol for either securing their treasuries or the configuration and upgrades of their programs. Today, I'll be talking about scaling the on-chain infrastructure to consumer fintech scale. And when I talk about consumer fintech scale, what I mean is talking about real scale beyond anything that we currently know in any on-chain application today. For example, Revolut in the last year added 15 million new users to their global products, totaling at about 52 million users globally. And so when we're thinking at this scale, we really need to think a little bit differently. And what you actually need to build, it goes far beyond just wallet infrastructure. You need to build the ability to connect to different rails, but also the ability to program all the current sort of money workflows that exist in modern finance today. And when we look at sort of like the core of what you need to build, a bit of a trilemma emerges, and very few solutions solve all three. First, we have security. Security is at the backbone of any financial system. And when we talk about security, it's not only about securing access to the funds, but it's also making sure that users can't shoot themselves in the foot, right? They can't lose access to their funds in a permanent way. Next up, programmability is incredibly important for flexible policies from a security standpoint and for controlling the programmatic movement of funds. And ultimately, when we're talking about 52 million users globally, the cost of managing these accounts is extremely important. And so what is broken today? Well, of course, EOA wallets, seed phrases are an extremely bad UX and introduce a very bad single point of failure that won't really actually scale to 52 million users. MPC, of course, improves resilience and the DevX, but ultimately, it moves the trust guarantees off-chain, adding an extra layer that needs to be monitored and audited constantly. And at Squads, we've been working on smart contract wallet infrastructure on Solana. We call them smart accounts. And we believe that they natively possess the programmability and security, especially with multi-sig setups. But that doesn't mean that smart accounts are inherently perfect. Well, when it comes to smart accounts, we have to instantiate rent, right? And so ultimately, the cost of rent and the rising price of SOL becomes an ever-growing issue. Right now, the average price of deploying a 3-signer multi-sig or smart account on Solana is about 35 cents. And as the price of SOL continues to rise, this becomes a bigger and bigger problem. Well, over the last few months, since probably a year ago, there's been various different implementations on state compression on Solana, some based on ZK, some based on moving the data storage off-chain. But all of them come with their trade-offs. But ultimately, what they enable is that what previously would have cost almost $20 million to deploy 52 million accounts now only actually costs about $300. So we can see that it's something that we need to implement for us to solve the basic needs of account infrastructure to go for scale. Now, our compression implementation is a little bit different than others, because for us, being a programmable smart contract wallet, it's extremely important that we don't give up on transaction space, which in Solana is just so precious. And so instead of making state transitions on compressed state, we dynamically can compress and decompress an account whenever the account needs to be active. And so all transactions ultimately that modify the state of that account, say it be a transfer from your wallet to somebody else's wallet, happens when the state is fully paying rent. But this means that application developers can choose to optimize their capital. And so whenever they have an account that is being used constantly, they can leave the rent there. And whenever it's not, then they can compress it and recover that rent. When we look at sort of like solving things at this scale, solving only the accounts is not necessarily enough. So as Jerry spoke about yesterday, the RPC read layer on Solana is not necessarily the greatest. Leading financial data APIs have guarantees of response times of under 100 milliseconds. But when you make a query to an RPC, you're looking at anywhere between 150 and 400 milliseconds, depending on where you're querying. Part of that problem is that RPCs do too many things. The data, of course, needs to be parsed. So we end up having to have very specific knowledge of the programs that you are interacting with, that your wallets will compose with. And this is a bigger problem than sometimes we realize. Because, for example, if you want to have push notifications when a customer receives funds to their wallet, say that somebody's sending them USDC, it turns out that if you're only indexing or listening to the customer's wallet address, which ultimately is a system program account, you won't actually receive a notification when the token account receives the funds, because the token account isn't actually present in that transaction. These types of patterns are seen over and over again in program design in Solana because indexability wasn't necessarily one of the main drivers or design considerations that were made at the moment that the program was created. And of course, saving space on transaction size by not having to send an extra account is something that program developers do constantly. So when we talk about sort of scaling to this size and building, essentially recreating the entire financial system entirely on chain, the indexing of this data remains to be something quite complex to solve. Of course, when we talk about a banking application, we're talking about connectivity to the greater financial system. This means free interaction to and from your account, from stablecoins into different fiat currencies at different financial rails. And most importantly, there's a talent question where when you're scaling a company to so many millions of accounts globally, you need a way to train and to be able to hire engineers that will be valuable to your business from day one. And this also remains a challenge in Solana because there's a bit of a steep learning curve of figuring out how to do all these things on chain. There's a lot of things that are not necessarily very explicit. We're working on the edge of technology here, so inherently a lot of things will be a bumpy ride. And so we have to solve a way to basically have access to a greater pool of engineering workforce. And so over the last few months, we've spent some time at Squads reimagining the stack to create the modern money grid. What will it take to get to this scale? And which is why today we're really excited to announce Grid. Grid is an open finance API to building on stablecoins. Open finance being the set of frameworks and standards on which most of modern financial technology is built on today. And so this is quite exciting because as we're bringing stablecoins into open finance, we're recreating all of the common, very necessary workflows for modern finance to exist, like payments, debit mandates, standing orders, entirely in a self-custodial, programmable way, entirely on-chain. And so by embracing patterns and languages and the language that Fintech uses, going as far as renaming the whole flow of transaction building, transaction signing, and transaction submission to intent creation, payload authorization, and confirmation of this payload, all of a sudden we have access to a talent pool that is 100 times larger than that which exists today in blockchain, sort of like the blockchain developer ecosystem. And so it's extremely exciting to be able to bridge ultimately that gap to be able to grow teams a lot faster. In order to kind of showcase how simple it is, we're also releasing an open source reference implementation of a neobank. And this neobank is basically just a plain UI that with 12 API endpoints, we are creating accounts with emails with our friends at Turnkey in this example, sending and receiving stablecoins from banks and on-chain through native integrations with Bridge, and KYC and virtual accounts also coming from Bridge. All the indexing, data layers, we're using Helios and Triton, and more integrations are coming, essentially building the stack for the modern money grid. Ultimately, if you are not convinced by the end of the week that the place to build you should be convinced by the end of the week that the place to build the next fintech is on Solana. And if you're trying to build your fintech 10x faster, you should do it with Grid. Please, you can go to squads.xyz/grid to learn more. And the team is all here. Please raise your hand. You can come up to us all throughout the week. They're all wearing Squads or Grid merch to learn more about Grid. Thank you.